Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon. We are doing live severe weather coverage this evening across the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are expecting an active evening. They do, in fact, have a severe thunderstorm watch in place until about 9 o'clock. And there's plenty of signs that that looks to probably going to be continuing really into the overnight hours. So this is more of a scattered event. We already had a lot of activity earlier today, a couple hours ago, further south of Dallas there, that produced some pretty large hail, and that swung through for about an hour or so. And now things are kind of on the quieter side, but I do feel like things are going to be ramping up again. We are in the warm sector now, so with the dew points are back in the 70s. So the coolness in the atmosphere has subsided. Now we're getting back into kind of the muggier air mass. But in fact, we do have that severe thunderstorm watch currently in place across a good part of the Metroplex, all of East Texas. So we are expecting an active evening. So here's the actual boundary further south of Dallas. That's the boundary we've been talking about for a while now. That's just been kind of draped across Dallas. That's the ones that produced all. That's really been the culprit of all the severe weather that we've seen. So we're going to have this today, and really going to have this into the overnight hours, and really tomorrow. So we still have about another day and a half of these, active severe weather. So it's not a widespread case, and it's a scattered case, and it looks, they're once they form, it doesn't take much for these things to turn severe. There was a cell down in Terrell a couple hours ago that literally went from nothing to severe very quickly. And then the storms blew up behind it on the backside. We had a lot of massive hail. In fact, we had several reports of baseball size hail just an hour or two ago. But like I mentioned, things have kind of quieted down at the moment. So we do have that severe thunderstorm watch in place. All this watch includes very large hail, what we've seen as of late. I mean, we've seen some massive hail across the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. In fact, Mansfield had 5 inches last night off that supercell that took a kind of a left hook turn and went northeast, and it made it a long ways and dumped that massive hail all the way down there into the Mansfield region. But we've seen a lot of hail of late, and we're going to be looking at a possible isolated tornado threat. It's really going to be mainly around this boundary stalled around south of Dallas. That's where I feel like if there is going to be a sped up tornado this afternoon into the evening time frame, it's going to be down further south across this boundary that's draped across south of Dallas here. So that is I would think the main area that we have to be concerned about for a possible sped up tornado. But we do have that severe thunderstorm watch in place for another couple of hours until 9 o'clock. And that's just the first watch. Like I mentioned, there's definitely possibilities we could have severe weather well into the overnight, even to the wee hours of the morning. So this could easily be extended. So, but I wanted to come on live here and kind of give you an update on what's all happening across across the Metroplex. So let me take these watches down and kind of show you what we're looking at currently right now. So we do have several severe thunderstorm warnings. They are out in far East Texas, but the main setup with this particular event is going to be just the very large hail. And we are going to have some damaging winds, but the main thing is going to do a lot of damage with these storms. And they already have done a lot of damage the last couple of days to cars and the houses. Is just that massive hail. I mean, anytime you get golf ball size hail, tennis ball size hail, baseball size hail, we've seen softball size hail, we've seen grapefruit size hail, and yesterday was the Mansfield topped out at 5 inches. I mean, this is kind of getting serious, guys, and we're not out of this setup, and we still have, like I mentioned, about a day and a half to go on this particular event. So you can see across the Metroplex, there's not much happening. If we kind of zoom in across the Metroplex here, there's nothing on the backside. So we're just kind of watching just scattered activity forming. Right now, everything's essentially just east of Dallas, and it's all back into northeast Texas. But we do have some pretty pretty significant, severe storms with these. They're still producing some pretty big hail with it. That's about an inch and a half up there towards, heading just across the border there in Oklahoma. We also have more activity that's moving across Tyler, as well as, and this activity is also has some, 1.5 inch hail associated with it. These are typically moving east, southeast. That's mainly the direction of these particular storms as they kind of move across, the Metroplex as well as into East Texas. Hey, Catherine, how are you doing? Prosper kids, soccer won't cancel at 6:15. Should we be okay? It's just one of those things. I know people are asking me, hey, what time's it going to hit your city? Like I said, the atmosphere that we're in right now is, just because there's nothing on radar right now doesn't mean there's not going to be anything in the next 20 minutes. So, I mean, it's one of those things. We've got outflow boundaries draped across the entire Metroplex. The atmosphere is like full chaos mode. So as soon as we have a just even one cell that pops up really over the Metroplex and in East Texas, they tend to have other cells that kind of fire within that same sector. So, like I said, the cell earlier in Terrell, we literally went from nothing to about an inch and a half hail in less than 20 minutes. And that storm blew up to some, almost a baseball size with that particular storm. So it's just going to be one of those evenings that, you just got to keep an eye to the sky, and it's going to be an overnight event. I know people were asking me about the timing earlier. So the best timing I could give you is afternoon through the evening and through the overnight. It's scattered in nature. When they pulse up and pulse down 2 hours ago, it almost looked like a war zone out there in parts of Dallas. And now it has kind of calmed down a little bit. So let me show you some of this hail earlier. And this is just today. We've seen numerous hail every single day, but this is just today. These hail swaths, like I mentioned, you had one cell that literally kind of blew up over Dallas, right? And they travel east southeast, and these are known to split, and just like this one did, right? So they have this one, technically a supercell, that literally formed right over Dallas and started that east southeast direction. And then once it hit Balk Springs, it blew up, 2.25 inches. That's ping pong size hail. That's going to do a lot of damage to your cars and even your rooftops out there. And it continues east, southeast. We went through Forney all the way through Kaufman. And then it continued to traverse course, having the golf ball size hail, sometimes up to ping pong size hail all along its wake. And it literally started in Dallas and it went all the way through Canton and to Van and to Tyler, now Overton. You see the history of these storms. So you really only had like 2 supercells earlier, but those supercells did a lot of damage. And the northern branch kind of split off, right? So you see the split. So they split off and that went northeast. And this particular cell, I also had some pretty significant hail associated with it as well, down south of Garland, near the Rockwall area, near Fate. I mean, these are areas that have already been hit hard the last couple of days. Down south of Caddo Mills there, look at that, 2.5 inches. That's upwards to tennis ball size hail, folks. I mean, south of Greenville there into Campbell, down towards Commerce. You see, as they continue to be on the ground, these hail cores last for a while. And you think they stop, but they go on forever. It seems like, Clarksville, 2.5 inches, 2 to 2.5 inches, all the way up to, and where that storm is now, right? Well, that's the same cell that's actually going into Oklahoma now that has literally been on the ground since Dallas. These all originated in downtown Dallas. And like I mentioned, it was only really two separate cells. But those 2 cells have done a lot of damage. And actually, they're continuing. If you zoom in, that's exactly where the warnings are, heading towards Henderson, heading towards the Carthage area. And then the northern branch is, heading towards the DeQueen, up into, southeastern portions of Oklahoma. So we're still dealing with the same supercell that's basically been on the ground for kind of, kind of several hundred miles, now. So that's kind of the nature of the beast. I mean, so right now we're just kind of waiting on potentially another supercell to form. And if it's got to go two things, right? It's either going to go east southeast, or it splits. It's going to take that northeast northeast turn. So that's the direction we're typically going to look for these storms. And ideally, the ones that do turn east northeast, those are the ones that could have the most significant hail, out of these particular systems. That's probably, it's exactly what we saw the other night when the storm in Highland Village happened, the storm in Flower Mound happened. It took that kind of that left hook turn. That's the storm that produced the Mansfield storm last night. That took, when these storms that kind of blew up over the Brady region just last night around, down south. We had a storm that blew up here. We had east southeast direction, right? But we had one splitter that split and then went northeast, and it made it all the way into the Mansfield area just south of Dallas, and it produced that massive 5-inch hailstone, spiked hail too, and it had a lot of water content. And that's probably what's going to happen tonight. We're going to get those funky shaped hail out there, because these are, we've already seen the dew point rise, right? So these are going to have a lot of water latent content to it. So typically those produce some of those funky type hell shapes, like we saw that Mansfield that I posted just last night, where they just had those spikes in it. And that's typically what you get when you got these kind of higher dew points. And it's kind of a wet one too. You pick it up and you looked at the picture, it was really wet. So it's one of those things, if you get one of those things, first of all, don't go outside when it's still hella. They could do a lot of damage. So if you do happen to find one of those things, it's always good to put it in your freezer if it's one of those big ones. So it kind of stops the melting process. But and if you have any pictures tonight of hail, it's always good to line it up with a like object, like a dime or a quarter, or like a golf ball, or a tennis ball, or even a baseball, depending on the size. But if you can get, if it's safe to get a hailstone, tonight, if it does fall at your house, and if it's safe to go out there and the hail has stopped, then always remember, if you're going to post a picture, to put a like object next to it. So if it's, if you have a quarter, put that a quarter next to it, and post a picture of the actual hail, along with maybe even a ruler to even further verify it as much as possible. So the point of it is, you want to get a more active reading on the actual hail size versus just kind of holding it in your hand, because it's hard to tell if it's multiple hailstones in your hand, if it's a kid shaped hand or adult shaped hand. So it's always easier if you post a golf ball size next to it, and then post the hailstone next to it. That way we already know a golf ball is like 1.75 inches, and you can kind of look at it and say, hey, that's, and especially if you can combine that with a ruler, it's even better. So, but yeah, so that's the hail core that we've seen, kind of so far tonight. And like I mentioned, it's going to be one of those things. The models have been kind of horrendous on when these things start. I honestly, I wasn't expecting anything until 4 or 5 o'clock. And then, when I was out and about earlier, of course, I was not at home. Things started blowing up. It was about 1:30, and then, so of course, now that I'm home, 4 or 5 o'clock, ain't nothing going on. So it's just the nature of the beast. And, so weather is one of those things, you can't time it exactly, hey, if it's active. So right now we're just kind of watching and waiting, looking at the radar. We are under a watch, and we are under, what we know right now, we're in the warm sector, so we are in the warm sector again. We're having these kind of the moisture latent content kind of override, this boundary layer that's draped across south of Dallas. So we have actually approached 74 as a dew point in DFW. So that's the highest of the day so far. and it's still kind of going up. So that tells you the atmosphere is just getting um, just more moisture associated with it, and it's not going to take much. We are looking for another potential disturbance that's coming in from kind of the Colorado region overnight, and that could reactivate storms as too. So we'll do live coverage as long as necessary, but it is one of those things that it's not going to be like, hey, we got a squall line come through and it's going to be in and out in a couple hours. So this is this is a scattered event. This is all scattered. It could literally be quiet for next couple hours. We could have a cell kind of blow up and then really start to turn severe. We could have nothing for until 11, 12 o'clock, and then it blows up into the overnight hours. I mean, that's kind of the environment we're in right now. The models have not been just very good at all with trying to pick out exactly when and where and the timing of this. We know because we have what we have with the Storm Prediction Center. We know a whole area is it's prime for severe storms, very large hail, damaging winds, but we can't fine tune it to where it's hey, this is that we know has a greater probability of stuff forming along this boundary, which they have, right? So this is the main area that we're going to be looking for further south, at least right now, until we get into really the overnight hours when stuff could be coming from portions of Colorado through Northwest and through Oklahoma and dive into the Metroplex. And then we could have more energy form on the northern branch into the overnight hours. Kind of like what we saw this morning, but it really traversed and stayed on the northern periphery. We had some pretty significant rain this morning. Let me show you some of these rainfall totals. It's just been, again, it's been pretty sporadic. These have all been about 40% coverage. So I know a lot of you are like, hey, it never rained a drop at my house. I get it. These are one of those feast or famine type setups. Whoever gets it gets the brunt of it. And it's like a war zone outside, and they have a lot of heavy flooding. And then 60% of you are like, well, where's all this rain at that you've been talking about for a week? I haven't had much of anything. So I get it. And I'm actually one of those. I haven't had much of anything at all. I've had less than a 0.03 inches of rain. That's next to nothing. But there's definitely other areas that have had 4, 5, 6 inches. They've had areas of baseball size hail, softball size hail. So, I'm thankful I don't get the hail, right? I mean, there's a lot of damaging happening over the last couple of days across the DFW Metroplex. We had the one on the 11th time frame. I mean, I'm probably estimating that alone was probably easily over a $500 million storm right there at least. And then we've had one yesterday. I mean, we could have had $1 billion in damages just over the last couple of days from these particular events because it's just been so widespread. And that's not even counting with those little 2 cells that I showed you. I mean, you had hail on the ground for like 200 miles, doing quarter to golf ball to tennis ball size hail. That's a lot of damage. If anything is in its path, it's going to dent a lot of cars out there. It's going to mess up a lot of rooftops out there. And that's just basically 2 supercells that lasted about 2 hours, and how much damage that could actually unfold just in a 2-hour time frame. And we've seen that and more. And then that's the situation we're under, at least for another day and a half, as long as this boundary literally sits there, and which is expected to sit there for at least and through tomorrow before it moves out, that we're still in this particular sector we have to be concerned about. So here's the storms. Now that I've zoomed out, here's the storms that I'm talking about that could actually, impact the northern areas in towards the overnight hours. You've got this complex. You got this complex of storms up here into Colorado, and you've got this other complex of storms up into the Panhandle. And you actually see there's a tornado warning on here right now. So these are some pretty high impact storms, and these are going to be diving east, southeast into the overnight hours that could land into the Metroplex, at least on the northern side, and into the overnight time frame. But yeah, those are some pretty serious storms. Let me turn the fan on. I thought I had the fan on. Oh, hey Ross, how's it going, buddy? Hey, thanks for tuning in to live coverage here. So what I was going to show you? Oh, yes, I was going to show you the rainfall from just in the overnight hours. So yeah, so here's that band that set up from that had the kind of the same deal, had a disturbance that came through Colorado, went through the panhandle and then landed in North Texas on the northern periphery. So just south of Ardmore there, these are the rains from this morning, laid down a good 4 to 5 inches of rain, down towards the Durant region, just north of Denison. And again, these all traveled east to southeast, right? Just south of Paris, some very heavy rain into the Cooper region, along this Sulphur Springs region, 5 inches of rainfall towards the Mount Pleasant area. And it got really serious as we went towards, just north of I-30 there, upwards to 8, 9 inches of rainfall just this morning on these training thunderstorms. So there's a lot of people that have had flooding rains, but there's areas obviously towards McKinney, right? There's just been in kind of a donut region where they haven't really seen much of anything. And that's the kind of the nature of the beast of these particular cells. But this continued through Mount Pleasant, 5 inches of rainfall. And then it finally kind of lost its steam as it headed towards the Marshall region. But yeah, you can definitely see the trajectory. It's two cells, right? It's two ways of direction. So if they form, they travel east, southeast, or if they are severe, then they took that northeast turn. And this was the northeast turn from last night. Once that supercell originated around the Brady region, you had a cell that dove east, southeast, and then you had the split. So you had the splitter, and then that's the one that traversed northeast and headed towards the Metroplex, and then eventually dumped that massive hail. And it actually got bigger the further north it went. It was supposed to kind of die out, like a lot of the models were hinting at. It really didn't. So that means it had a lot of moisture to work with down here towards the, kind of this warm sector, down this into this boundary, and all that water vapor, all that increased higher dew point made it alive a lot longer than what it was supposed to. And yes, it was able to produce those massive hailstones into the middle over the overnight hours. So it's just been a very active time for the next 2 days. And so let's go back to live coverage here and see what's happening. All right, let's take some questions. Hey, Rob, how's it going? Hey, Michael, thanks for tuning in to the live. Yeah, let's keep that away. Keep it out of McKinney. Why is Nashville, Tennessee getting so much severe weather this year? Well, part of the culprit is we are under El Nino. This is El Nino now. We haven't seen this for a long time, not as one strong as this. But in fact, it's been really, I would say, dating back to 2015. But this one really mimics more 2009 than it does 2015. It's almost identical to when the actual El Nino started back then in 2009. A lot of similarities are unfolding, and you just have a really persistent subtropical jet stream coming in off the Eastern Pacific, very warm waters out there. And then you have a mid-level jet that's draped across North Texas now and across the deep South. That's a lot lower than what it typically is this time of year. Usually it's well further north up in Colorado, but this time it's further south. And then, of course, if you live south of that boundary, we've got a pretty massive heat ridge building in South Texas. And it gets crazy warm once you get into South Texas. But yeah, once you have that lift mechanism coming in out west with the active subtropical jet, the low-level, mid-level jet, you've got that cold air aloft. You've seen a pretty good boundary. Right now, it's only 79 degrees. That's chilly for DFW standards. You hit 99 the day we had all that massive hail. And then yesterday, the high was 87. It's even lower today. So far, the high is only 79 degrees when the average high is 91. But if you go just about 100 or 200 miles further south, it's well into the 90s, if not approaching well over 100 degrees further south into South Texas. And so, and this boundary is slowly lifting northward. So, because that eventually the ridge is going to dominate and lift all over into Texas, and we won't have any severe weather to talk about. The only thing to talk about is going to be talking about this dangerous heat that's going to unfold. So if we do get like a lot of rainfall the next 2 days, then it's just going to be downright nasty next week with these massive, heat index. I mean, gosh, I don't even want to think about what's going to happen because we do have a very strong ridge going to dominate over much of Texas. And if we have a lot of moisture in the ground, then man, these dew points are going to be well into the 70s. Heat index values are going to be well into the hundreds, if not the dangerous 110, 115. I would even go fair to say 120 down there in Corpus Christi, San Antonio, Austin. So we're about to start a string of triple digit heat. It's either Thursday or Friday it starts, but either way, once it starts, it's probably not going to let up for a while, for really the foreseeable future, as long as I can actually see it, which is easily 10 to 14 days out. And even some of the long range estimates, it might actually extend all the way through the middle of July, so it's going to be a pretty bona fide heat wave that's going to lock over Texas for an extended period of time. And eventually it's going to overtake Oklahoma. It's eventually going to overtake Kansas, and eventually going to head right to Canada. It's going to be really warm by the time we head into, Father's Day weekend into early next week. And if you want any coolness in town, man, it's just going to be out west. We have a pretty significant trough that comes in off the West Coast, and those temperatures take a tumble by Tuesday and Wednesday next week. It could be in the 50s, 30s, even snow and some of those higher elevations in the mountain regions. Pretty crazy stuff, but I don't want to get off track right now. And let's get back into this particular setup, what's unfolding. So right now, again, we're looking at live coverage for the Metroplex. We still have that duration of that one supercell that's still continuing east southeast and into the Tyler region, that's still producing some quarter-size hail with these particular cells. There's not much happening within the Metroplex currently, but all it takes is one cell to kind of form within this kind of warmer sector to really kind of take off. We're just seeing some isolated pockets, sporadic rain showers across Clear Lake region into Lake Lavon, towards the Lowry Crossing region, just south of McKinney there. One little heavier cell just looks like Bloomdale, just in North McKinney. So, and we're seeing just sporadic pop-ups, non-severe. These aren't severe, just heavier rains, isolated heavier rains across Anna, across the Howell region. There's Whitesboro. Hey, pal, it's kind of different now here in southern Indiana. Today it was about 50 degrees. Yeah, so you've got that low pressure center up there. And man, it's a pretty significant low pressure that formed up in your region. Let's zoom out here. Southern. Oh, is that just the tropics? Yeah, so here's if we expand the view, so you basically had this upper level low that just kind of sitting and spinning, right? And so if you're on the south side of there, you're in that rain zone. So you're getting those training cells. This is not severe, but these are some heavier rain amounts towards the Chicago region, towards South Bend, You had some heavier rains towards Dayton, Ohio, and this is an area that's been looking for rainfall for a while. And so this was actually a good sign that this low pressure center kind of formed and parked itself over Michigan, and you're doing, on the southern fringe of that, you've got some pretty significant kind of training rains that you're seeing in that region. Of course, that has its own cold core with it, and it's got a pretty cold, colder temperatures along with it as well. And so that's why you're seeing some of that chillier rain. So right now we've got a tornado warning. This is in far, far, far north, north of the north in the Panhandle here. We do have an active tornado warning. It looks like that's ongoing right now. Hmm. Get back into my. All right, so let's put the storm track in this one. Yeah, so yeah, this one's actually turning east southeast as well. So this is far. This is actually north of just outside the Dalhart region, up in the Panhandle, and it looks like we do have an observed tornado that is actually on the ground up there. So that's a confirmed tornado near the Stratford region, just 7 miles east of Conlin. That's a yeah confirmed tornado that is actually on the ground right now for Sherman County and Dallam County up in the Panhandle. This is just northeast of the Dalhart region, traveling east to southeast. So if you live up there and within the heart of the Panhandle, you definitely need to take cover of this tornadic supercell that is on the ground right now. You can see the leading edge of that starting to enter. It's going to be. It looks like it's going to be traveling just north of the Cactus region. So north of Cactus. This is coming out of east of the Dalhart region, but nonetheless, we do have an active tornado that is on the ground up in the Panhandle, and that's a whole nother area that have seen a lot of severe weather just in the last month. They've seen a dramatic turnaround and rain up in that region. A lot of flooding rains, and it's all culprit again of that just El Nino. It's just almost been like a funnel effect, all within those regions up there. But that's going to be that same system is going to continue east southeast, and of course Amarillo is still a pretty good ways away. So I mean, you just do the math on that. It won't even actually make it into the Metroplex until the overnight hours. This is after midnight. So right now we're worried about the southern branch. If there's anything that's going to be, really kind of setting up and forming just along this boundary here, just south of Dallas, that's the zone that we're looking for additional development, at least for the next couple of hours, until that northern branch kind of takes hold into the overnight time frame. So but yeah, that's the nature of the beast with these storms. Sometimes it doesn't have a convenient timestamp on it. It happens when it happens, right? And if you're not home, you obviously can't do live coverage. If you're not by a computer, you can't do live coverage. And now that I'm sitting here ready to go, there's not much happening. So what's going to happen is the things are going to probably blow up in 11 or midnight tonight, and it's going to be really active while everybody's asleep. It's just one of those things, guys. These are scattered supercells, right? This is a very chaotic air mass. We had that system that passed through south of Dallas earlier. Obviously, when that came through, it kind of stabilized the atmosphere. Now it's in the process of kind of like regenerating, if it can. So we already know the dew points are rising. We already know that. So the atmosphere was worked over a little bit, even though those areas to the north didn't get rain. They still got the outflow from the system, that the cooler air. So right now, they're basically destabilizing the atmosphere kind of all over again. And so we're looking for is one particular cell to really kind of blow up, but we're not seeing that if it's going to happen, right? So we're not seeing that. So it's kind of like a waiting game. If and when something's going to happen, the math says it will, and some of the models, the short range models, say it will as well, but in reality is there's not much happening right now. So um, hey, why do you predict? What do you predict for Van Zant County? I got to warn my mom here. Well, I mean, like I said, this whole area, nothing's changed. We still have that. Let me put the parameters on here. This is the latest update from the. All right, so we still have that enhanced risk in play. So this is the big picture, guys. So we still have that enhanced risk for a good part of Dallas. This when they put these out, these go on until 7 o'clock in the morning. They don't end just because it's midnight. These are these are estimates through 7 a.m. the next day. So we'll have another update from the SBC around 8 o'clock. But still, their latest thinking is it has not changed. It's mainly centered right in the bullseye of this little boundary that drapes just south of Dallas. So we've seen numerous severe storms just to the south of this boundary and to the north of this boundary. So they just kind of drew a line essentially from McKinney to Waco. That's kind of a guesstimate on where the most significant severe weather could unfold between now and 7 o'clock in the morning. And then you have lighter probabilities, up here towards the panhandle, right? And up towards, and, don't take these lines verbatim, but because this is a wide area, but the main reason is this is all draped across this boundary, right? You see the thinking. This boundary goes from Dallas all the way to the Carolina coast, right? And within this boundary on the southern side and the northern side, they pretty much marked where severe storms could unfold. That's the best guesstimate of what we're looking at with this particular setup. And as long as this boundary is there, we've got cold air pressing from the north, we've got warm, soupy air mass to the south, and we've got a mid-level jet stream draping across North Texas. And so we have all the mechanisms in place to produce big time hail. These are big time hail setups. It's really just kind of southeast of Dallas that you have a potential for an isolated tornado threat with this particular setup. But the main threat is your hail, and we've seen a lot of hail, and we're going to continue to see more hail over the next. Oh wow! As I'm talking, there's that Brady storm. Okay, so we do have some action down there towards Brady. This is the same. This is the same area that kind of blew up and started this supercell just last night. This is the same area, and look, it looks like it's splitting again, right? You see that? It looks like it's already splitting. So we could be looking at a similar type scenario unfold than what we saw last night. So we have one supercell, and then it splits right here. So you see it's already kind of separating. You've got this one cell to the north and one cell to the south. So you're probably going to have an east southeast directory, and then this one's heading northeast. That one's heading northeast towards the metroplex. So yes, we are actually have new confirmation of one supercell, and a lot of times, again, that only takes one. It only takes one supercell to be on the lookout for. And this is the identical area that we saw one last night take shape. That's doing the exact same thing again tonight. So yeah, similar type setup. Let's look at the cloud top on this one. Last night it maxed out at 64,000 feet. This is already every bit of 57,000 feet, folks. So It's getting right up there, and 64,000 feet, that's about as tall as they come. That's why it produced, 5-inch hail last night in Mansfield. You can do a lot of work in the atmosphere when you got 10, 11 miles to work with, so and this thing's already 57,000. That's 10 miles in itself. So yeah, so we could be looking at another significant supercell unfold that would dump a lot of very large hail in its wake. It doesn't appear that there's do we have any hail currently right now? It's very small. It's probably just borderline severe at the moment, but with the cloud top that high, it's not going to be taking long before this thing really starts to blow up here. And we're going to be worried about more the northeast turn versus the southeast turn. The southeast turn is going to be heading towards that's going to be heading towards and more into central Texas. That'll probably likely head towards eventually towards the Fredericksburg area, Round Rock, San Marcos, potentially Austin, some of the bigger cities that might be in the wake of this maybe cell that could traverse east to southeast. But the northern branch is the one that Dallas probably, closer into the Metroplex, has to be probably, more worried about with this particular setup. Yeah, so it's still a good ways. It's still a good ways from the Metroplex. But if we actually kind of keep that on there, let me go back and show you that hail core again. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. This is the one I'm talking about last night. It's right there, basically in a similar area. This is last night's hail. This is not current. This is last night's hail. Very similar area. Traveled, did that east northeast direction. So yes, if you combined, if you combine this morning, that last night's setup to today's setup, you've almost got little crisscrosses across the Metroplex. These are hell swaths. So that this one that formed, and this was yesterday. It kind of stopped right there, and this is actually today. But yeah, so they've been east northeast or east southeast, and those have been directions of these particular supercells. So it's only been two, and only take a lot of times it only takes one to do a massive damage, and we already have one. We already have one, folks, and it's growing. It's still gaining. It's still gaining intensity down there into Brady. So we'll definitely be watching that. That'll be something we're going to be watching for the duration of the evening. So because this is it could be some more significant damaging hail that could unfold for a good part of central Texas, and then maybe last into North Texas. We'll just have to. It remains to be seen, but the bottom line is we do have confirmation of two supercells that are taking formation right now that are borderline severe down there towards Eden and to the Brady region, that has shown a history the last 2 days producing massive hail, big time hail, damaging hail. And you've seen it all. You've seen all the pictures. You've seen the pictures from the Highland Village stuff, the Flower Mound stuff, the Mansfield stuff. This is destructive hail, folks. I mean, very damaging, destructive hail, the kind of hail that will go through your windshield, the kind of hail that would do a lot of damage to the roofs. It's an unfortunate situation, and we are in right now. We're in prime time setup for large hailstones across the Metroplex. And we still have about another day and a half of this setup before we can kind of, 75 now. Look at that. All right. So the dew point at DFW is continuing to rise, folks. 75. And that's important because obviously the higher the dew point, you've got that more fuel. So you got serious updrafts, And then you, along with that updraft, you got, the higher the dew point, the higher the more water content that's going to be within these cells. That means the bigger they can get. We already know the cloud top's 57,000 feet. So there's a lot of room to work with in the atmosphere, and those stones could be up there for a while, for a long period of time. The longer they're up there in the atmosphere, the bigger they're able to get. And by the time they do fall, it's been melting and refreezing, melting and refreezing, melting, refreezing. I expect to get some really cool, I guess you could say, really odd shaped hailstones tonight. Odd shaped. I mean, those spiked hail, like the looks like maybe a shellfish type stuff. It's not going to be one of those solid balls. Some areas might, but it's not going to be one of those like just solid golf ball types. So they're probably going to be jagged and kind of funky looking. So Um, so we're going to be, the middle of the country is going to be heating up in a big way. So as soon as that ridge kind of takes over, for much of the middle of the country, then you're definitely going to be drying out, into next week. So eventually, what's going to happen is this low pressure is going to shift back towards New England, as this ridge builds up from the south. So eventually this ridge over Texas is going to be shifting all the way up into Canada. And all this middle of the country is going to be extremely warm. And then we have a significant trough coming down from British Columbia. And this whole area into the west, but especially in some of these mountain regions into Idaho and Montana and Wyoming and the Colorado mountains, it could get cold and even cold enough to snow in some of these higher elevations. So that's the setup heading into next week. And of course, where the ridge is, there's not going to be much rain underneath that ridge at all. little to none. Weather in June, it's going to be hard to bring severe weather to your region because we're going to have another Omega block set up. Hey, driving to Oklahoma City tonight, anything to worry about? Well, I mean, currently right now, no. I mean, there's not anything currently right now, but we do looks like we have a new cell that just popped up north of Mount Pleasant here. So a brand new cell that just sorry, let me put this back on just turned severe towards the Mount Pleasant region. It looks like to be borderline severe. It's mainly for hail and not for wind, because it doesn't even have some 50-mile-per-hour winds with it. But and that's going to be the main thing. I mean, some of these cells could turn 60, possibly isolated 70, but you can actually see the blue starting to form here, and that's another fairly significant hail core that's building towards the Lakeview area. This is, let me get my bearings. All right, looks like this is north of Interstate 30. So this is north of Interstate 30. Another pretty significant hail. So look what's happening here, folks. There's not much going on, right? So if we take you back through just in the last hour, this is an hour time span, and there wasn't much of anything within this region, right? And so these things don't really take that much time to turn severe in a big way. There's a lot of lightning with these. And then so it's, we're going through the destabilizing process right now. So there's not going to be taking much once these things kind of have some lift with them. And once they get going, there's uncapped. I mean, we don't have a cap in the atmosphere. A lot of times we always talk about the cap. We got some warm air aloft. We got some sort of inversion on the northern periphery, 4,000 or 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere, but we don't have that. I mean, there's nothing to stop these things. So it's not going to like you have an updraft and it's going to hit that 5,000 foot mark and be squashed down. So it hits that 5,000 foot mark and it just keeps going. and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And right now, that one cloud top's 57,000 feet, right? So there's not much to stop these things once they really get going. And that's why they can literally go from nothing to severe. So if you're leaving the house right now and say, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm looking at the radar and there's not much happening. There's nothing going on in the area." I bet you could be out and about 10, a couple miles down the street, look up in the sky and say, "Oh, it's turning darker now." And then 10 minutes later it's starting to hail. And that's the nature of the beast, what the atmosphere that we're in right now. So and that's exactly what we're seeing that's happening just north of Mount Pleasant here right now. Yeah, so the atmosphere is definitely capable of producing some pretty big, massive hail. The severe thunderstorm watch includes up to 3 inches in diameter, but there's definitely going to be probably isolated areas that could potentially even be larger than that. So I'm not going to be surprised again if we start hearing reports into the overnight hours or as we do live coverage here tonight, starting to see some of those 4-inch hailstones, very isolated, but the math says we're going to be seeing at least one or two of those within the Metroplex tonight somewhere, you know, somewhere in the Metroplex. We can't tell you exactly where that's going to be, but there's probably a good likely possibility we're going to have baseball to softball size hail somewhere in the Metroplex to bust out windshields. But yeah, this is looks like it's continuing to strengthen now. This hail core is getting a little bit larger. You can see the expansion of the purples there. So it's this is about to cross Interstate 30 shortly. What's the direction on this? Oh, 40 miles an hour. This one's actually moving a lot faster. Yeah, it says half dollar size hail, but it's likely it's even larger than that now. I'll try to poke at him. Okay, what? Am I missing questions? I give up on the month of June. Some beautiful. Hey, where is this? Oh, that's Mount Pleasant, Jackie. So we're zooming in here. This is east of East Texas. So this is the Sulphur Springs area. This is right along Interstate 30. So there's McKinney, there's the Greenville, there's Commerce, there's Sulphur Springs, and this is Mount Vernon. This is Mount Pleasant. So this is far, far northeast Texas right now. This is what we're looking at, far, far northeast Texas, and has you know a growing supercell continue to expand in coverage and gain in intensity here. Oh, hey Patrick, you're storm chasing in Mount Pleasant right now. Hey, be safe out there. Yeah, so we're approaching the 6 o'clock time frame. We have another mesoscale discussion that's highlighted in this region. This is the beginning stages of this one actually trying to turn severe as well. So it's not going to be for the wind. It's mainly going to be for the hail. But right now it's just nickel size. But that's typically where they start. And it's not going to probably take long for this one to maybe get some quarter size hail with it as well. But everything continues to be east of Dallas. Like I mentioned, we had those cells earlier that kind of stabilized the atmosphere. And right now we're just kind of going through the restabilize, getting more unsettled across the region, more or less. We already see the dew points activated. They're going higher, so they're not getting lower. They're actually getting higher. And we already see that supercell further south as well. So that's probably the main concern, through all this is this particular cell that's already kind of formed down there in the Brady region. that it's holding its own. So right now, actually, this one's blown up to potentially up to golf ball size hail right here in the Minyard area. So it continues to get stronger. Um, just in the last frame or two, it's got a pretty significant small hail core right there into the Minyard area. Kind of take you through the last couple of frames. Yeah, the last couple of frames, it's definitely gotten a little bit stronger, and it's gonna head northeast, and this one was heading northeast, heading towards that boundary there. Oh, I use this is Radar Omega. This is an app called Radar Omega. You can actually purchase it yourself. This is the alpha version. This is a paid subscription. So I pay for this software. Hey Ghost, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for watching live coverage. But yeah, so you can easily Google it yourself, and there's three different versions to choose from. This is the best version, I guess you would say, the premium version, the alpha version. But they've got all different versions, so you can check it out. They probably have a free trial you can look at and see if you like it. But it's called Radar Omega. I'll put it. And they're constantly sending updates, right? So it's not like one of those things where you start paying for it, and if they send an upgrade, you got to repay for it. No, you just have a monthly cost or an annual cost, however you choose to pay, and then yeah, you get the benefits of all the upgrades. Right? It's cool. It's a pretty cool act. I feel like it's actually one of the best ones on the market for everything that it does, wide on a widespread basis, and what it does. And they're continuing to put out new versions on the product as well. They've gone from a 3.7 version since I started using it to like either 5.0 or 5.1 now. So they've done 14 or 15 different upgrades just since in the last year or two since I've been actually looking at it myself. So pretty cool app, and they're only getting better with these things as technology kind of improves. And um, but yeah, check it out yourself. Yeah, so you only need one version. So you once you pay, you can download and just put in your username and password for the desktop version. So you can get the desktop version and then also download the app on your phone and connect it and have the. I've got both, right? So obviously this is the desktop, and then I have the app on my phone as well. And I still got Radar Scope. I've got 4 or 5 different apps. I'm a weather nerd. I've got all the apps. So I just like to have a variety. um, but yeah, check it out. Check it out for yourself. It's a pretty cool. All right, so let's go back to live coverage here and see where we're at on these particular storms. Yeah, exactly the same as last night. Exactly. It's pretty much identical setup. Southeast of the Metroplex into the Brady region. Kind of the same time frame too. It happened about 5, 6 o'clock. Um, I think Reed Timber was down there, and he might be down there heading towards down there in that region. He's heading towards the tornado sector, which is probably pretty close to this region. But yeah, it's doing the split. It's doing the exact same split that it did last night. So you can't say it's going to do the exact same thing. It could easily stop and not go as far north, but it's kind of eerie that we're looking at the same kind of similar type setup that produced the flower mound stuff, because that also split too. We had a cell that came through portions of Denton County, and then one dove southeast, and then the other one split. And whenever it did that, it went over Highland Village, it went over Flower Mound, and they also had some. That was the 11th event. They also had some baseball to grapefruit size hail. One picture was that Buffalo Wild Wings picture. That was softball. That was softball size hail out there. And ideally, it was actually cross timbers, and I forgot the street, 4.25 inches in Flower Mound was the biggest hail, and you didn't think that was going to beat until last night when Mansfield came in at 5 inches. You don't know how rare that is, guys. I mean, just for the entire state of Texas alone, considering how big that is, you remember the Wiley event back in 2016 when we had 5.25 inches? That was considered in the top 5%. At that time, the top 5% of the largest hailstones to ever fall in the state of Texas. And then we're almost doing this on a yearly basis now. We had the one in Hondo that actually broke the record. It went like 6.25 or 6.5 inches in Hondo, about south of San Antonio. We just actually had the 3-year anniversary of that particular hailstone, but that's the record for Texas. But it seems like we're constantly having these, just the other couple years ago, down towards Electra, up in towards the Wichita Falls region by Vernon, Iowa Park. There was another hailstone, Burke Burnett. Yeah, Burke Burnett. There was about 5.5 inches with that particular hailstone. That was about 3 or 4 years ago. So almost on a yearly basis, we're getting some of these 5-inch hailstone. What used to be a rare event that happened in Wiley in the top 5%, like of the biggest hailstones, we're basically having that on a yearly basis now. We've seen it almost every single year since the Wiley event. Somewhere in Texas, we had a 5-inch hailstone or greater. It's pretty scary stuff, folks. And so we saw another one last night in Mansfield, right? I mean, so it's happening way too often now that we're getting just this massive hail and it just seems like it's just getting bigger and more frequent, I guess you could say, just more frequent in nature. So, but yeah, so we got a pretty big. Oh wow! So this is up there, folks. This is upwards to golf ball to tennis ball size hail, folks. This is the city of Bratchfield, in Long Branch. This is south of the Longview area. There's another pretty significant hail core down there, and this is really kind of blown up in the last just 20 minutes or so. There's the city of Carthage. Again, if you're getting your bearings, we're talking East Texas. This is the boundary. This is where they're going to be following this this boundary, the most significant hail right around this boundary. And that's exactly what we're seeing here coming out of the Tyler region, heading towards Henderson. And we've got some pretty significant hail approaching the tennis ball size hail variety down there in that region. It's very small, but it's doing a lot of damage as this continues to move east southeast. So we do have confirmation of a destructive hailstone happening right now in the city of Henderson. This is Henderson, Texas, moving east at 40 miles an hour. Locations in its path are going to be the Henderson area. This is the type of stuff that's going to put out your windshield in your car, folks. If you live down there, baseball size hail confirmed by a storm spotter down there and by Henderson High School in the city of Henderson. Confirmed baseball size hail. Very damaging, serious stuff. The city of Carthage, Pine Hill, Gary City, and the Chapman region, the Dotson region, the Woods, Churchill, and Fairplay are all under the gun of seeing that baseball size hail as it continues to shift kind of east southeast direction, and a very destructive storm continuing to unfold here within the Henderson area, confirmed by spotters, storm spotters on the ground, by the high school there in Henderson, of a destructive hail. This is the kind of stuff that would bust out your windshield easily. This is the kind of stuff that will take out your windows. This is the kind of stuff that will poke holes in your roof. And when you got cloud tops of what is it in this region? Yeah, so every bit of 56,000, folks. That's a long way to travel. You got baseball size hail traveling 10 miles up in the atmosphere. You're approaching 100 miles an hour, folks. I mean, that's dangerous stuff. You don't want to be outside. I mean, you want to be able to put a helmet on in this type of atmosphere. And we've got several supercells. We just continue to have the cloud top, so that echo tops on here. Yeah, numerous two cells producing over 55,000 feet, right? So that's got a lot of room to work with. There's probably going to have the most significant hail with these particular cells. And this was all heading east southeast, and it's going to continue to head into the center area, Mansfield area. Uh, let's see, Nacogdoches. This is in far east Texas. We're getting towards that's actually Mansfield, Louisiana. This is south of Shreveport. So we're actually getting on the borderline of East Texas, but nonetheless, yeah. So let's go back to this Brady cell, and this one's continued to climb here, 60,000 feet, folks. This is almost deja vu from last night. I was watching this, and I don't know if it ever got above 64, but it definitely got to 60. 66, it got to 64. I don't know if it got any higher than that, but 60 is plenty room, folks. I mean, that's about the third day in a row I've seen a supercell over 60,000 feet. That's rare stuff in itself. It's very difficult to get a cloud top that high up in the atmosphere, and it seems like we've easily done that the last couple of days with some of these supercells, and that's the atmosphere that we're in right now. Very destructive hail can happen in that type of situation. It's just a very dangerous setup. I had too much to do. I turned on the air condition. Yeah, it's going to be muggy. It's definitely going to be muggy outside. We're not feeling the ultimate mugginess because right now the temperature's 77 and the dew point 75. So it's right basically 94% humidity. So obviously when you max out the temp and the dew point are the same, it's basically 100% humidity. Um, but it's muggy. It's definitely muggy out there, and you can just feel you just feel it, right? You can walk outside and say, "Hey, I think something's going to happen today," because you could just feel the mugginess in the air. But so far, right now, the Metroplex is fairly quiet within the immediate Metroplex. Most of the activity is out there in East Texas, um, and then of course well into Arkansas. But yeah, so we do have activity right now in Far East Texas with several destructive supercells. It's unfolding right now. The main one is going to be in the city of Rusk, and that's in Henderson County by the Henderson High School. Yeah, so we can watch this particular cell here continuing to unfold, and they continue to move east southeast. Right, that's the direction of these movements from these particular cells, kind of the east southeast. Hey, so really, it's been dry, and I think the smoke is coming back. Oh, the Canadian wildfires. I had 60-degree dew points, but was back in early June. Hey, I'm just now joining in. Is Alan going to get anything? Maybe later. I mean, Alan's under a severe thunderstorm watch until 9. So we are expecting more activity later on in the overnight hours from these cells up here in the in the Texas Panhandle. And then you might have this cell that's going to be, yeah. So basically, we have this activity here that's going to be moving into the Metroplex into the overnight time frame. We probably have this cell down here in Brady that's lifting northeast that could move into the Metroplex. Then, of course, anything out ahead of those two cells that could form, within, before those make it here. So that's kind of the setup that we're in, right? So, but as of right now, you can see most of the Metroplex. If we kind of zoom in, it's even getting clearer. The only rain close enough is in Greenville currently right now. Is in Greenville. But I definitely wanted to come on and do live coverage. I wasn't home earlier when we had some nasty cells down there in Dallas. and I got back to the house about 5 o'clock, and so I said, "Hey, I wanted to go live here and kind of give you an update on what's happening." And this was kind of forecasted. It just scattered, folks. I mean, I know people were asking me like, "What timing? When can I expect to hit a particular city?" And it's just one of those things that you can't do that in this type of atmosphere. It's going to be a scattered in nature. um, we saw cells earlier blow up, and then now we're getting kind of that relaxed period. But we're seeing additional cells blow up south of the Metroplex, but they're still pretty good ways away. Nothing's forming within the Metroplex. And then there's stuff out in the Texas Panhandle that's moving this direction. So, if that's what, we're just, it's kind of a wait and see game, right? It's kind of a wait and see. I was expecting stuff to start forming around 4 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. Instead, we had stuff form around 1:30, and then really started to unfold around 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then once all that moved through, things died down after 4 o'clock. And it's just one of those things. It's the nature of the beast with these storms. There's no timestamp on it. You can't really depict exactly when and where they are going to form, but we do know the atmosphere says, hey, if you can literally go from nothing to 20 minutes and have severe storms, and big time severe storms, if that. I mean, these are all big time hell producers, but they're isolated. It's an isolated deal. I mean, obviously, not everybody gets it. Of course, you don't want everybody to get it. Only sometimes we're only talking about maybe a couple supercells. That's it. It only takes one or two to do a massive amounts of damage. We're not talking numerous supercells, but where we are going to get a supercell, you're going to have some significant hail, and you're going to have some significant rainfall with these. We've seen both. So if you're outside of that, you're going to be wondering where the rain is. And so the reason why this is a destructive event, because it's an isolated event, it's a scattered event. If this was widespread, we wouldn't be seeing all this nasty severe weather. But you got to have discrete supercells to produce destructive hail, and that's exactly what we're seeing. You see the isolated nature of these. There's a lot of separation in between these particular cells. They're all kind of by their lonesome, right? And that's the reason why these are severe. But we have to put a widespread area, and it looks like a lot more than what it is, because you don't know, you just don't know exactly where these supercells are going to take shape. I mean, this supercell could easily be 100 miles north of this area and then dive east southeast. You just don't know where these are going to originate and then move across. So that's why they just have just kind of a massive area, and say this whole area is unsettled. This whole area is unsettled, and it's going to be over an extended period of time because it's scattered. There's stuff coming at all different directions. Like I said, there's stuff coming from the southeast. There's stuff coming from the northeast. They're coming at us coming at all different directions. So you kind of have to have that risk, and you kind of have to have that risk for an extended period of time because of the uncertainty of the timing. So the risk includes very large hail between now and 7 o'clock in the morning. That's still another 12 hours. So even though we have the severe thunderstorm watch until 9 o'clock, there's likely going to be an extension to that, or a renewed one later on into the evening time frame. I would fare to guess. But right now, even though we are under a watch, most of the Metroplex is. And the reason why they did it, because we had several cells earlier around the Dallas area that kind of blew up. One went east southeast and one went northeast. And they put the watch out, which was definitely warranted, between now and 9 o'clock. And so now we're, 2 or 3 hours away from it expiring. But it could easily be reactivated again and have a new watch into the overnight once this particular cell could get closer within the Metroplex, and once these systems up here, the Panhandle, could get closer into the Metroplex. That's probably a very likely scenario that could unfold. So even though it's fairly clear now, just on math alone, by 10, 11 o'clock, it could really be unsettled again into the overnight time frame. Hey, looks like El Nino is going to delay the southwest monsoon. Yes, I fully agree with that, Nightwalker. I'm not expecting. In fact, the monsoon. Well, what's June 15th? Yeah, it usually gets going 2 days from now. So yeah, I definitely appear that that appears to be delayed for sure. I definitely agree with that. Better than 112-degree heat. I just had dinner, enjoying my dinner. But I appreciate you tuning into live coverage here tonight, this evening, across the Dallas Fort Worth region. Like I mentioned, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do live coverage because, most of the activities well off to the east and into East Texas, there's not much happening within the heart of the Metroplex. But we know the parameters. It's a pretty scattered event. It's going to be 40% coverage, kind of throughout the evening into the overnight hours. We've got two setups happening that could unfold into the overnight hours. First, we've got that pretty significant system down there towards Brady. That's a very isolated event, but it looks like to be two separate supercells that still continues. Looks like that hell core has come down a little bit too. So two supercells down there in that region. That's kind of an identical type setup to what we saw just last night. So we're watching, of course, we're watching that activity, and then of course we're watching this activity in the Panhandle. But it's still a pretty good ways away. I mean, and there's even more activity even behind that and into Colorado. So but we do have that severe thunderstorm watch until 9 o'clock this evening. That goes on until 9 o'clock this evening. I mean, I can look at some of the high resolution guidance, but I mean, again, these high resolution models have not been your friend lately. They just really haven't been that good. Just because it says something, where it's going to be at this certain time doesn't mean it's going to unfold like that. A lot of times it hasn't. A lot of times it hasn't even initialized where storm activity is at the current time frame. So it's been kind of very frustrating with these particular systems lately. You kind of have to do a broad brush, and sometimes it comes down to a lot of nowcasting. If you just have one cell that's formed down there in southeast Texas, you tend to go off that, and history shows and say, hey, this is going to go northeast regardless of what the actual models say, because you'd much rather go off real-time activity. But you got to have a starting point. If you don't have a starting point, if there's nothing over the Metroplex currently, you don't know when or if something's going to form. But once something has formed, at least we know that probabilities, this activity is going to continue east southeast, and that northern branch is going to continue northeast. We know that. So that's what we know. Going into the overnight hours. All right, but let's run the models here and kind of see where they're at. I mean, again, this is just kind of gives you an idea. I would not obviously take this verbatim, but this just kind of gives you an idea of what we're potentially could be expecting into the overnight. So if we stop the clock here, this is 7 o'clock. Um, this is just, again, this is kind of a model run. I would not take this verbatim whatsoever, but it's kind of hinting at these cells that are down here could be closer towards the Fort Worth region, by then. So we have more that activity up into the Panhandle of Texas getting a little bit stronger. And if we move the clock again, that same cell down here towards Brady could be over the Metroplex then by 9 o'clock. This is just kind of gives you a broad brush idea. Maybe heading towards into Collin County, still that activity out in East Texas. And then as we get towards the 10 o'clock time frame, we've got some more isolated pockets over the Metroplex. Of course, this is outside of the severe thunderstorm watch, which could easily be extended or just reissued. There's midnight time frame. There's one, there's two, there's 3 o'clock in the morning. So 3 o'clock in the morning, again, don't take this verbatim, but that's in the wee hours of the morning, right? We got a pretty nasty cell down toward, west of Fort Worth. And then a pretty nasty looking setup that could potentially be over the heart of the Metroplex at 5 o'clock in the morning with several supercells traversing across from that activity from the Texas Panhandle. Right, this was all stuff that could potentially move out from the Panhandle with another disturbance that could potentially move over the Metroplex into the wee hours of the morning and continue that east southeast trajectory into the morning hours tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. And then that would move off into East Texas by 9. And so let's run this again. So we have potential that those cells down here towards the Brady region, we have that one cell that's already shows signs of splitting. That's going to be potentially lifting northeast, and that's going to be going over into the Metroplex towards the potentially 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock time frame. Kind of clears out by midnight, and then potentially more activity comes in out west from the northwest of the Panhandle and moves across the Metroplex potentially 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. So again, you can't take this verbatim, but that just kind of gives you a general idea of what may unfold. But at least for the next couple of hours, it appears to be fairly quiet within the Metroplex, and it could possibly ramp up again as those cells get closer within the Metroplex towards the 9 o'clock time frame. So maybe just kind of they could reissue the watch. Yeah, I mean I think it's probably very evident that we're going to be reissuing the watch, for a good part of the Metroplex. I would say that's almost a certainty at this point. That one's going to expire, and when they do reissue it remains to be seen. But there's definitely going to be activity into the evening time frame and into the overnight time frame into tomorrow morning. So, but appears to be we might have still some lull in the activity for the next couple of hours while the atmosphere is still becoming more unstable, because it continues to show activity out in East Texas. But yeah, within more of the heart of the Metroplex, there's definitely less activity. And there's if we continue to just watch this stuff, there's nothing that shows me in the next couple of hours, at least, that things are going to take off anytime soon. So the culprit is still kind of far away. It seems like it still seems to be maybe a couple hours away. And really this southeast stuff, these ones aren't really taking off like they did last night. I mean, we have two supercells. Yes, they did split, but they're not as they're not as significant. They're not taking off like the ones they did, kind of last night. So. But yeah, so that's the setup, guys. I mean, that's like I said, this is could be a long evening for the Metroplex, could be into the overnight time frame with this particular action. Right now, everything's into far East Texas. towards the border of Louisiana, getting into Arkansas, and but yeah, it's right into the heart of the metroplex. It's pretty quiet at the moment, but I do feel like things are going to ramp up in the next probably couple of hours. Especially into the overnight time frame and the wee hours of the morning. Most of y'all be sleeping in the wee hours of the morning. So it's probably a good idea, just because we have those hatched risk in place. If you do potentially have one of those hell covers, if you've got if you got the capability of putting your car in the garage. My cars live in the garage, but if you do have that capability under a carport, I would just use extra precaution tonight, to go ahead and park the car underneath the cover, because you never know if it's going to drop at your house or not. You just don't know, but we definitely have that potential. Um, so you got to realize, with all the hells happening, that those people are backed up, right? If it hell's in your car now, it might be a while before they're able to fix it. I mean, with all the damage that's happening over the metroplex over the last couple of days, things are getting busy, folks, and the waiting lists are getting longer. And if you go through another destructive hail event, we could have delays for a while trying to find resources out there. So. But yeah, so that's it, guys. Just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on what could unfold later on this evening. If it happens to, quickly turn severe, by 9-10 o'clock at some decent hour in the evening time frame, I'll definitely jump back on live, kind of, keep you as safe as possible. But right now, it's a little bit calmer across the metroplex, but we do have to be concerned about those two supercells, just south of Dallas, and the stuff that's coming in from the Panhandle, that could impact into the overnight time frame. All right, guys. Yeah, appreciate you guys watching out there, and y'all be safe. And I'll keep you posted. All right, bye.